like that Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Well, I think that a lot of us are beat poets at heart. Cindy just does a really good job of putting it out there, getting it outside her heart, out to people, which I like. Cindy has a character that she's written about for a long time called Michelle Domingue, and it hasn't been published, but I have every great expectancy that someday Michelle Domingue will be on, a household word. She does. And my dream sometime is to have a show where I can, and I've been trying to get Cindy to do shows for a little while, and she has lots of things going on. And so career moves are important when you're in the music industry. And doing a show with me isn't necessarily one of the best career moves. So, but the point being is that I would like to sometime have a Michelle Domingue in our show. I would just love that. So that's one of my dreams. That would be so great. I would love that. Anyway, so you can all look forward to that. Let's see, where am I here? Okay. I was not raised an only child. I had a brother. I still have a brother. He's sitting right here. His name's Rick Saxton. And as I said, we were raised by the same parents. Loosely speaking, my father, I've mentioned the Lucy Joan business. And my father was, I don't know how Rick put it, a cross between Elmer Gantry and who else? Some psychotic. Anyway, my father was a very repressed man of the cloth, as they say. And we were raised actually we were raised as Mormons, No reflection on the Mormon church particularly, because this was, my father's situation. So we were raised in an environment where we literally lived two lives. And there was a life that we lived out there for everybody's to see for approval, and there was a life that we lived inside home, which Rick and I affectionately call hell. My mother, as I've said before, has turned out to have been a schizophrenic and probably has been all her life. But you got to remember, in the 50s, she was just like a nutsy lady who learned to cope fairly well, considering all the problems that she had. So Rick's way of coping with it was to go into his room and isolate, and he would buy maybe 17 or 20 models from the model store and create the most fabulous hodgepodge of things, from wheels and wings and everything you can imagine. Nothing was ever what it was going to be from the beginning. That would drive my dad insane. He would just go, he can't have any more models. There will be no more models in this house until he can learn to put the wheels where they belong and the wings where they belong, and things that fly should fly and things that roll should roll. And that was, and of course, Rick, didn't pay any attention to that. On the other hand, I was, I learned how to cope by lying. There's nicer names for it when you're little and so forth, and they've come up with great names for it now with the young people having so many trouble. But the fact is I was a liar, and I became a pathological liar. And by the time I was in the second grade, the teacher took a great lot of artwork that I had done to my mother, and was very concerned. And she said, it wasn't that the artwork was so horrible, although I was into stick figures and such, but she said that it was just that it was so repetitive. For an entire year, I had drawn the same picture over and over and over and over. And my mother had the bright idea of asking me why I was doing that. No one had thought to do that. They just had been concerned all year and staring at me a lot. And it was a picture of, all I knew how to make was R's. So I had two big R's, which became curtains to me. And then I had this lovely stick figure woman with lots of blonde hair, and what I, in my mind, with a bright blue crayon, had made this big sequin dress. And to me, it was definitely sequins. And so this became a stage. It was quite obvious to me. So they asked me why I drew this woman over and over and over again. And I said, well, she's my mother. My mother was very beautiful, and she was a very short, dark woman. Looked like a very short, diminutive Loretta Young. She was really a very beautiful woman, but she definitely was not this picture. And they said, well, that doesn't look like your mother. And I said, why no? That's because my mother's Betty Grable. I don't know if anyone remembers, Betty Grable was a big star in the 40s. And they said, that's your mother? Your mother's Betty Grable? Now, I'm in the second grade. I have already decided that this is going to be my story. And I stuck with it. Betty Grable had a baby, but was so busy doing shows she didn't have time to raise me, so she gave me to my mom and dad. And I stuck with it. This was my mother. She was on the stage. She was gone off there somewhere, and that was that. So we all find very interesting different ways to cope. I went on from there to do other things creatively. By the time I was in, I don't know, I think fourth grade, I think it was third grade, I was approached by the school to do a huge recital. Seemed word had got out that I was a virtuoso. Gee, I wonder who said that, you know? And I had told a few friends had told a few friends, and it became fact. Well, of course, I couldn't play chopsticks. I have no talent on the piano whatsoever. So I was always having to fess up to this, and I was constantly taking horseback rides with friends who owned horse ranches because I had blabbed off about what an expert horsewoman I was. And I was getting their horses lost, getting my foot stepped on, nearly getting killed. I would not admit that any of this stuff wasn't true. And so now I stand up here on the stage. I'll tell you now, it was all a big lie. On the other hand, the reasons that I did it still exist, and it's to survive. It's to make things a little bit better, and so that's mainly why I do what I do. So, a little long-winded there, but I wanted to tell you this because my brother's getting ready to come up and do whatever he wants to do. He is a wonderful songwriter. He tells beautiful stories. Well, sometimes they're not beautiful. He tells honest stories, and he's just one of my very, very favorite people in the whole world. We grew up close. We've been apart a few times through his experiences. He went to the war. I won't say which one. You can figure it out. And we've had our differences. We have a completely different philosophy on life. Totally. I mean, he comes from Zen, and I come from hysteria. You know, we're just completely different. He can just stand there and look at me while I just flap right off the edge of the roof, you know. And he always had a saying that I love, and I use it. It almost brings me back home, period, no matter what. He'll say, don't pay attention to what people say. Just pay attention to what they do. And I like what he does, and I'm glad to introduce him, and one of my best friends, Rick Saxton.
Didn't know you were so short.
I always like to plagiarize what Cindy says. Actually, when I was on the road with Cindy, I would set the mic up on stage to that button, and it would be perfect for Cindy. Yeah. Depends on which shirt I was wearing. Yeah. Or if you were wearing your stilettos or not. This camera was made about 25 years ago, and still working pretty good. The first pictures I ever took was on a camera that was a square box, sort of a rectangular box. And I remember I was introduced to it by my mother, and she could never load the camera, so I always wound up loading the film and taking some of the pictures, but she always would insist that we take the camera wherever we went. And I think my penchant for photography wasn't so much in fiddling around with the camera or loading or getting the film or whatever. It was watching what happened after we got the pictures back. That's what made it so interesting. It was also watching what happened while she was trying to get the picture, what people would do. What do you do when somebody points a camera at you? See, it's... Sometimes. Sometimes people don't, but I know when a camera's pointed at me, I get this feeling that starts right around my kneecap, shoots down to my toe, and kind of comes up to my throat, and I go, oh my God. I just really, it's, nah, you don't want to take a picture of me. So I have this incredible amount of empathy when I point the camera. I want to do it like, I'm not really doing this. It's okay, it's just, but the camera, for me, became an emotional part of my existence. Not just the camera, but what it meant. How I would feel when somebody pointed the camera at me. And so through the years and years of snap shooting, I eventually became a quote, photographer. And a friend of mine named Harold G. said that technology is bringing snap shooting and photography closer together. And I thought, well, I don't know. I think technology is getting snap shooting and photography farther apart. Because to me, the photography part is something that you witness in an image, but you don't really know there's a camera that's been there. It somehow goes from the image to the person who is observing the image. Whereas snap shooting is part of that emotional involvement of life itself. Not that snap shooting isn't art. I think snap shooting is a complete art unto itself. And sometimes it would be better to pay attention to the snap shooting part of it rather than the, quote, photography, so I don't get all wrapped up. And I don't know, it's kind of dark in this portion of the stage, but I don't know. Why don't you sit over there? Why don't you sit there for a minute? John, why don't you sit like right over there? Yeah. Now, it's just to illustrate all the little things that happen with, you know, it's sometimes it's enough with one person and the camera, but with a whole group of people, it sometimes generates a form of intimacy and fear all at the same time. And I wrote a song about my mother's penchant for pictures. By all means, not photography. Photography was something that she could care less about. But she always insisted on bringing the camera. Something inside changes when the family life is gone. As the memory turns to gray, the pictures linger on. Like a snapshot back in Somerville, my first love on the steps. Smiling, young and innocent, not telling secrets kept. Faded yellow, black and white, she watched the children grow. Later years had turned the color, didn't change the things we know. Mother always got the camera out, she'd hoped to make things last. Instead she saw the things to come in the pictures of the past. A little box of pictures, she doesn't keep a book. Spreads them on the table there to take another look.
a private world in front of her, so deep inside but real, telling stories and recollection, what the pictures don't reveal. Now the pictures never showed us the things that shape her fears. So what we never talked about took hold throughout the years. When her daughter became a poet, a heavy curtain fell over shadows in the corners, but what the pictures couldn't tell. No stranger to the death of dreams and how they're left behind. Somehow it would come to life if just the pictures I could find. Now just like mother, I keep a box of pictures of my own. I get them out so late at night, the times that I'm alone. So mother, save the pictures. Next time before I go, we'll look at them together, and I can let you know how the pictures only tell one part of the images I keep, like the sweet and gentle motion when you were rocking me to sleep. So mother, save the pictures. Next time before I go, we'll look at them together, and I can let you know how the pictures only tell a part of the images I keep, like the sweet and gentle motion when you were rocking me to sleep.
Thank you. Thanks for the use of the guitar, John, and thanks for the picture.
Diehards.